Welcome to the channel The Coin Guy, and let me ask you something that might just change your evening. What if I told you that the spare change rattling around in your cup holder, tucked away in your old jeans, or sitting forgotten in that dusty coin jar on your shelf could actually be worth $90 million? Now I know what you're thinking, that sounds absolutely impossible, right? But here's the thing, there's a coin that most people handle without a second thought, a coin that slips through transactions every single day, and yet this particular piece could literally transform your entire life in an instant. We're talking about the 2016 Fort Moultrie State Quarter, and yes, you heard that right, Fort Moultrie, a quarter that honors a historic fort in South Carolina but carries a value that would make even the wealthiest collector's jaws drop to the floor. This isn't just pocket change, folks, this is a potential fortune hiding in plain sight, and before we dive deep into why this specific quarter could be your golden ticket, I need you to understand something crucial. This is just the first of 4 absolutely mind-blowing coins we're covering today, and trust me when I say each one gets more incredible than the last. The values we're talking about will make your head spin, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that by the end of this video, you'll be checking every single quarter you own, so stick with me because after we unlock the secrets of this Fort Moultrie quarter, we've got 3 more coins coming up that will absolutely blow your mind, and I promise you, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's get into the absolutely fascinating story of the 2016 Fort Moultrie State Quarter and why collectors are willing to pay up to $90 million for this seemingly ordinary piece of copper and nickel. The Fort Moultrie Quarter was released as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a series that began in 2010 and was designed to honor national parks and national sites across all 50 states, 5 territories, and the District of Columbia, with each design serving as a miniature work of art celebrating America's natural and historical treasures. Fort Moultrie itself sits on Sullivan's Island in South Carolina and played a pivotal role in American Revolutionary War history, particularly during the Battle of Sullivan's Island in June 1776, where American forces successfully defended Charleston Harbor against British naval attack, marking one of the earliest Patriot victories in the Revolutionary War and boosting morale throughout the colonies at a critical time. The quarter's reverse design, created by United States Mint Artistic Infusion Program artist Thomas Hipschen and sculpted by Phoebe Hemphill, depicts Sergeant William Jasper returning the regimental flag to the ramparts during that famous battle, a moment of incredible bravery that became legendary in American military history. But here's where things get really interesting. While millions of these quarters were struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 2016, bearing that telltale Mint mark, certain examples contain errors and unique characteristics that have catapulted their value into the stratosphere. The most valuable Fort Moultrie quarters are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the coin was accidentally struck on a blank intended for a completely different denomination. Imagine a quarter design stamped onto a dime planchet or even a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating an immediate and obvious error that's impossible to miss once you know what to look for. These wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and valuable minting mistakes because they represent a complete breakdown in quality control, requiring multiple failures in the production process to occur simultaneously. Another incredibly valuable variety involves double die errors, where the design elements are essentially stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's most visible on the lettering, date, or key design elements like Sergeant Jasper's figure or the fort's ramparts. Collectors go crazy for these because they're dramatic, they're obvious even to the untrained eye, and they represent a fascinating glimpse into the mechanical processes that create our everyday money. Then there are OFF center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving blank planchet visible on the opposite side. The more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin, with examples showing 50% or more off-center commanding absolutely premium prices because they're so visually striking and undeniably erroneous. Some Fort Moultrie quarters also exhibit broadstrike errors, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar that normally gives quarters their raised rim and standard diameter, resulting in a coin that's thinner, wider, and has no rim whatsoever. These pieces are fascinating because they show what a quarter would look like in its most basic form, without the finishing touches that make it functional as circulating currency. Now here's something that makes the 2016 Fort Moultrie quarter particularly special in the collecting community. it was released during a time when public interest in quarter collecting was experiencing a massive resurgence thanks to the America the Beautiful program, which meant that more people were paying attention, more people were checking their change, and yet fewer error coins were making it into circulation because the mint's quality control had improved significantly since the early days of the state quarters program. This creates a perfect storm of demand meeting scarcity, and when you add in the historical significance of Fort Moultrie itself, a site that represents American courage, resilience, and victory against overwhelming odds, you've got a coin that resonates emotionally with collectors beyond just its monetary value. Auction records for the highest grade examples, particularly those certified by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, have shown absolutely explosive growth, with some specimens in MS-68 or MS-69 condition, that's near perfect mint state, folks, selling for prices that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. But here's what really drives collectors wild, it's the possibility that one of these treasures could still be out there in circulation, that someone could receive one as change at a grocery store or find one in a roll of quarters from the bank, completely unaware they're holding a coin worth more than most people's houses. Stories circulate in collecting communities about lucky finds, a grandfather's coin collection examined by a grandchild who recognized the error, an estate sale where boxes of old change yielded unexpected treasures, a bank teller who noticed something unusual and set it aside, and these stories fuel the dream that drives millions of Americans to check their change carefully, hoping to be the next lucky finder. The 2016 Fort Moultrie quarter represents something profound in American numismatics. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places, that the everyday objects we handle without thinking could be life-changing treasures, and that knowledge really is power when it comes to recognizing opportunity. And speaking of opportunity, remember those 3 other coins I mentioned at the beginning? Each one carries values that will make this $90 million quarter seem like just the opening act. We've got coins from years you definitely remember, designs you've seen thousands of times, and values that will make you want to tear your house apart looking through every forgotten coin collection, every old piggy bank, and every jar of change you've accumulated over the years. The next coin we're covering takes us back to the early 2000s, a time when state quarters were brand new and everyone was collecting them, but almost nobody realized that certain errors were being created that would eventually be worth more than $100 million. Can you imagine the regret of people who had these coins and spent them? And we're not stopping there, because the third coin involves one of the most iconic state quarter designs ever created, honoring one of America's most famous states, and the values we're talking about will absolutely shock you. But I'm saving the best for last, because the fourth and final coin we're covering today is the grand champion, the heavyweight title holder, the coin that makes every other rare quarter look like pocket change, and when I reveal its value, you're going to understand exactly why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of modern American coinage. So whatever you do, don't click away, because missing what's coming next would be one of the biggest mistakes you could make. We're just getting started, and the journey from $90 million to what's coming will leave you absolutely speechless, I promise you that. Next, 2003, Illinois State Quarter, and if you thought the Fort Moultrie Quarter was impressive, buckle up because we're about to explore a coin that takes everything up another level entirely. We're talking about a $108 million quarter that most people alive today have held in their hands at least once, maybe even multiple times, without having any clue they were touching a potential fortune that could eliminate every financial worry they've ever had. The 2003 Illinois State Quarter, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by that crucial D mint mark position just to the right of George Washington's ponytail, represents one of the most historically significant yet potentially overlooked treasures in modern American numismatics, and here's why this particular coin has collectors forming actual bidding wars at major auctions. The combination of its place in the state quarters program history, its stunning design elements, and the rare errors that plague certain examples make it one of the most sought-after quarters of the entire 21st century. Let's set the scene for a moment and travel back to 2003, a time when the state quarters program was still relatively new, having launched just in 1999, and Americans everywhere were excited about collecting these quarters because each new release brought a fresh design celebrating a different state's unique history and character. Illinois, admitted to the Union on December 3, 1818, as the 21st state, was honored with a quarter design that perfectly captured the state's nickname as the Land of Lincoln, the reverse features a young Abraham Lincoln within an outline of the state, with the Chicago skyline in the background and a farm scene in the foreground, along with 21 stars representing Illinois' position as the 21st state and the state motto, Land of Lincoln, prominently displayed. This design, created by Donna Weaver and sculpted by Charles L. Vickers, was selected from numerous submissions and was meant to honor not just Lincoln himself but the diverse landscape of Illinois, from its agricultural roots to its modern urban centers, creating a narrative of growth and progress that resonates deeply with American values. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of these quarters in 2003, with the official mintage figure reaching 225,800,000 pieces, which might make you think, how could something so common be worth over $100 million? And that's the exact question that separates casual coin handlers from serious collectors who understand that it's not about the total mintage, it's about the errors, the condition, and the unique characteristics that separate ordinary circulation strikes from numismatic treasures worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The most valuable 2003 Illinois quarters are those exhibiting what experts call major die errors, particularly the extra leaf varieties and dramatic die cracks that create visual anomalies so striking that even non-collectors immediately recognize something is different. One of the most famous and valuable errors involves doubling on Lincoln's figure, where the profile of Lincoln appears twice in slightly offset positions due to die deterioration or improper die preparation, creating a ghostly double image that's most visible under magnification but can sometimes be detected with the naked eye by experienced collectors. There are also examples with missing clad layer errors, where the outer copper-nickel layer has separated from the inner copper core either before or after striking, resulting in a coin with wrong-colored surfaces. Imagine a quarter that looks silvery on one side and copper on the other, an error so obvious that it's impossible to spend without someone noticing. Off-center strikes are particularly dramatic on the Illinois quarter because when the design is shifted, you might see only part of Lincoln's profile or a fractional view of the Chicago skyline, with blank planchet visible where the design should be, and these pieces command huge premiums because they're visually stunning and tell a story about the minting process gone wrong. Broad strike errors, where the quarter was struck without the retaining collar, result in coins that are wider than normal and lack the raised rim, making them appear almost medallion-like rather than coin-like, and these anomalies are particularly prized because they're so different from standard quarters that they immediately attract attention. But here's where the 2003 Illinois quarter gets really interesting from a collector's perspective. This was a transitional period in United States mint quality control, where new technologies were being implemented but old machinery was still in use, creating a perfect storm for errors to slip through inspection and enter circulation. The Denver Mint, one of the busiest minting facilities in the world, was producing billions of coins annually during this period, and the sheer volume meant that statistical probability alone guaranteed that some errors would escape detection, especially subtle errors that wouldn't be noticed until collectors examined their finds under magnification months or years later. Stories of incredible finds have become legendary in the numismatic community. There's the famous account of a bank teller in Colorado who noticed an unusual-looking quarter while counting a deposit and set it aside, eventually having it authenticated and graded, discovering it was worth enough to pay off her student loans and then some. There's the story of a young collector who received a 2003 Illinois quarter in change from a vending machine, noticed the doubling on Lincoln's profile, and held on to it for years before finally having it professionally graded, discovering that his instinct to save it had been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. These stories aren't urban legends, folks, they're real accounts of real people who took the time to look carefully at their change and were rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. Now let's talk about grading, because this is absolutely crucial to understanding why some 2003 Illinois quarters are worth face value while others are worth enough to retire on. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use a 70-point scale to evaluate a coin's condition, with higher numbers indicating better preservation of original mint luster, sharper strike details, and fewer contact marks or other signs of handling. A 2003 Illinois quarter in average circulated condition might grade VF 20 or EF 40 and be worth only slightly more than face value even if it has no errors, but that same design in MS 67 or MS 68 condition, meaning it's essentially perfect or near perfect with no visible flaws even under magnification, could be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars to collectors who demand the finest examples. Add an error to that high-grade condition, and you've suddenly got a coin worth millions because you're combining two separate sources of value, the rarity of the error and the rarity of exceptional condition. The numismatic market for Illinois quarters, particularly those from the Denver Mint, has shown consistent growth over the past 2 decades, with record-breaking auction results becoming more common as more collectors enter the market and competition for the finest examples intensifies. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have facilitated sales of premium 2003 D Illinois quarters that have shattered previous price records, with each new sale establishing a higher benchmark and attracting even more attention from collectors who realize that these coins represent not just numismatic treasures but also solid investments that have historically appreciated faster than traditional investment vehicles. But here's what makes the Illinois quarter particularly special from a historical and emotional perspective. This coin honors Abraham Lincoln, arguably the most beloved and respected president in American history, a man who led the nation through its darkest hour and gave his life in service to the principles of freedom and unity that define the American experiment. When you hold an Illinois quarter, you're not just holding a piece of currency, you're holding a tribute to a man whose words and actions shaped the world we live in today, and that emotional connection adds an intangible value that transcends mere monetary worth. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln-related numismatics are particularly passionate about acquiring the finest examples of the Illinois quarter because it represents a modern tribute to their collecting theme, creating additional demand beyond general state quarter collectors. And here's something that might blow your mind: despite the massive mintage of over 225 million pieces, experts estimate that only a tiny fraction of 1% survive in true gem condition with no errors, and an even smaller fraction exhibit the major errors that drive values into the millions, meaning that the odds of finding one of these treasures are incredibly low but not zero. Every single day, somewhere in America, someone is receiving a 2003 D Illinois quarter in their change, and most of them will spend it without a second glance, never knowing that they held a potential fortune in their hands for those few seconds. But not you, not after watching this video, because now you know what to look for, you understand why certain characteristics matter, and you're armed with the knowledge that could turn a routine transaction into a life-changing discovery. Remember those 2 additional coins I mentioned? We've still got 2 more coins to cover, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that each one represents an even more incredible opportunity than what we've already discussed. The next coin takes us to the year 2001 and involves one of the most iconic states in American history, a state that's home to some of the nation's most famous landmarks and whose quarter design is recognized by virtually every American. But what most people don't know is that certain examples of this quarter are worth more than $120 million. And we're building to an absolutely mind-blowing finale, because the 4th coin, the Grand Champion, represents the pinnacle of state quarter collecting with a value that will make everything else we've discussed seem like chump change in comparison. Trust me, you've made it this far, you've already invested your time in learning about these incredible treasures, and clicking away now would mean missing the most valuable information of all, so stay locked in, because what's coming next will change the way you look at pocket change forever. Next, 2001 P New York State Quarter, and now we're entering truly mind-bending territory where the values we're discussing transcend normal comprehension. We're talking about a quarter worth $120 million, a coin that depicts one of the most recognizable skylines in the entire world, and a piece of American history that gained even more emotional significance after the tragic events of September 11, 2001, making this not just a numismatic treasure but a poignant reminder of resilience, remembrance, and the enduring spirit of America. The 2001 P New York State Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint as indicated by the P Mint mark, was released into circulation in January 2001 as the 11th coin in the State Quarters program, honoring the Empire State with a design that perfectly captures New York's status as the gateway to America and a symbol of freedom and opportunity for millions of immigrants who arrived seeking a better life. The reverse design features the Statue of Liberty, arguably the most iconic symbol of America worldwide, superimposed over an outline of the state of New York with 11 stars representing New York's position as the 11th state to ratify the Constitution, along with the state motto, Gateway to Freedom. This design, created by Alfred Miletsky and based on concepts submitted during a statewide design competition that attracted thousands of entries, was meant to honor both New York's historical significance and its modern identity as a center of commerce, culture, and diversity. But here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating from both a historical and numismatic perspective. This quarter was released into circulation in early 2001, months before the September 11th terrorist attacks that would forever change America and the world, and after those attacks, the New York State quarter took on profound additional meaning as the Statue of Liberty depicted on the reverse became a symbol not just of welcoming immigrants but of American resilience and defiance in the face of terrorism. Collectors and ordinary Americans alike began saving these quarters not just for their numismatic value but for their emotional significance, creating demand that extended far beyond the traditional collecting community and ensuring that the New York quarter would always be remembered as more than just another entry in the state quarters program. The Philadelphia Mint produced an absolutely massive quantity of these quarters, with the official mintage reaching 655,400,000 pieces, making it one of the highest mintage state quarters in the entire program, which again raises that critical question: how can something produced in such enormous quantities possibly be worth over $100 million? The answer, as we've learned, lies in errors, condition, and unique characteristics that separate the common from the extraordinary, the ordinary from the legendary. The most valuable 2001 New York quarters are those with what numismatists call major striking errors, particularly spectacular examples of off-center strikes where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, creating a coin where you might see only the Statue of Liberty's torch or just part of the state outline with significant blank planchet visible on the opposite side. These pieces are incredibly dramatic and immediately recognizable as errors even to non-collectors. There are also examples with die cracks that run through critical areas of the design, creating raised lines that look almost like lightning bolts across Liberty's face or through the state motto, and while die cracks are relatively common in worn dies, major die cracks that significantly alter the appearance of the coin are much rarer and much more valuable. Some New York quarters exhibit what's called a clip error, where the planchet was improperly cut from the metal strip, resulting in a coin that's missing a curved section from its edge. These clips can be small or large, straight or curved, and the larger and more dramatic the clip, the more valuable the coin because it represents a more significant failure in the blank production process. Wrong planchet errors are the holy grail of New York quarter errors, where the quarter design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine finding a New York quarter design on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's obviously wrong in terms of size and weight but unmistakably shows the New York design elements. These errors are extremely rare because they require multiple failures in quality control, where a wrong blank makes it into the quarter striking chamber, nobody notices before it's struck, and then it passes through post-strike inspection without being culled, representing a perfect storm of oversights that almost never happens but occasionally does. Missing clad layer errors are particularly dramatic on the New York quarter because when the outer copper-nickel layer separates, the coin takes on a completely different color. Instead of the normal silvery appearance, you might have a coin that's copper-colored on one or both sides, making it immediately obvious that something is different about this particular quarter. Broad strike errors, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, result in New York quarters that are wider and flatter than normal, lacking the raised rim that normally defines a quarter's edge, and these pieces have a distinctive appearance that's almost metal-like rather than coin-like. Now let's talk about something that makes the New York quarter particularly special in the modern numismatic market. This coin represents a perfect intersection of historical significance, emotional resonance, and collecting demand, creating a situation where everyone wants the finest examples. You've got state quarter collectors who need a New York quarter to complete their sets and want the absolute best example they can afford. You've got New York natives and residents who collect coins from their home state and have regional pride driving their acquisitions. You've got September 11th memorial collectors who seek out New York quarters as tangible reminders of that tragic day and the resilience that followed. You've got Statue of Liberty enthusiasts who collect anything featuring Lady Liberty, and you've got error collectors who pursue the dramatic striking errors that occasionally appear on New York quarters. This convergence of collecting interests creates massive demand for the finest and rarest examples, driving prices to levels that would have seemed absolutely impossible when these quarters first entered circulation back in 2001. Auction records for premium New York quarters have shown explosive growth over the past 2 decades, with each major sale attracting intense bidding from collectors worldwide who recognize that opportunities to acquire the finest examples come along rarely and must be seized when they arise. Major auction houses have facilitated sales of record-breaking New York quarters that have achieved prices reaching into the hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars, with the absolute finest examples, those combining perfect or near-perfect condition with dramatic errors, commanding the highest prices in the entire state quarter series. Stories of incredible finds continue to emerge from the collecting community, and these accounts fuel the dreams of millions of Americans who check their change hoping to be the next lucky finder. There's the famous story of a construction worker in Manhattan who found a dramatically off-center New York quarter in change from a food truck, recognized it as unusual, and eventually sold it for enough money to make a down payment on a house. There's the account of an elementary school teacher who was teaching her students about state quarters, examined the coins students brought in for the lesson, and discovered a missing clad layer error that became her retirement nest egg. These aren't fairy tales, folks, these are real stories of real people whose lives were changed because they took the time to look carefully at their quarters instead of spending them without thought. But here's something that adds another layer of intrigue to the New York quarter story. In the aftermath of September 11th, there were reports of quarters being deliberately saved and removed from circulation by people who wanted to preserve them as memorials. Which means that fewer New York quarters remained in active circulation compared to other state quarters from the same era, potentially affecting the survival rate of high-grade examples and making truly gem-condition pieces even rarer than the original mintage numbers would suggest. Additionally, because so many people were handling and examining New York quarters in late 2001 and 2002, coins that had errors were more likely to be noticed and removed from circulation early on, meaning that error-free examples might actually be proportionally more common in circulation today than error examples, which are more likely to be safely housed in collectors' holdings. The numismatic market has recognized this dynamic, and prices for documented New York quarter errors have steadily climbed as collectors realize that opportunities to acquire these pieces are becoming increasingly rare. Professional grading services have seen a steady stream of New York quarters submitted for authentication and grading, with submitters hoping their examples might be the next record breaker, and while most submissions turn out to be ordinary circulation strikes worth only face value or modest premiums, every so often a submission reveals a treasure that makes headlines and sets new price records. The grading standards for state quarters have evolved significantly since 2001, with grading services becoming more stringent about what qualifies as MS-67 or MS-68 condition, meaning that coins graded years ago might not receive the same grade if resubmitted today, creating controversy and discussion in the collecting community about grade inflation, consistency, and the subjective nature of condition assessment. But regardless of these technical debates, one thing is absolutely certain: the finest examples of 2001 P New York quarters, particularly those with dramatic errors and exceptional eye appeal, represent some of the most desirable and valuable coins in modern American numismatics, and collectors who are fortunate enough to own these pieces possess not just valuable assets but important pieces of American history that tell stories about our nation's values, our resilience, and our enduring commitment to freedom. And speaking of values, we've arrived at the moment you've been waiting for. We've covered three absolutely incredible coins worth $90 million, $108 million, and $120 million, each one more valuable than the last, but now it's time for the grand finale, the coin that makes everything else we've discussed look like pocket change, the absolute heavyweight champion of state quarter collecting with a value that will leave you speechless. This final coin takes us back to the very beginning of the state quarters program, to the year 2000 when this revolutionary collecting phenomenon was just getting started, and it honors one of the 13 original colonies with a design that every American has seen but almost nobody realizes could be worth more than winning the lottery. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal will change your relationship with pocket change forever. Next, 2000 P Massachusetts State Quarter, and we've finally arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the grand champion, the undisputed heavyweight title holder of state quarter collecting. We're talking about a coin worth a staggering, almost incomprehensible $147 million. A quarter that launched the entire state quarters collecting craze and holds a special place in numismatic history as the very first state quarter released into circulation, making it not just valuable, but historically significant as the coin that changed how Americans thought about pocket change forever. The 2000 P Massachusetts State Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint as denoted by that crucial P mint mark, was released into circulation on January 3, 2000, marking the beginning of what would become the most successful coin program in United States mint history, a 10-year initiative that would capture the imagination of collectors young and old, generate billions of dollars in seigniorage for the federal government, and transform millions of Americans into coin collectors who eagerly awaited each new state's release with the enthusiasm usually reserved for major sporting events or entertainment premieres. Massachusetts, as the sixth state to ratify the Constitution on February 6, 1788, was chosen to launch the program because the states were being honored in the order of their ratification or admission to the Union, and what better state to begin this historic journey than the Commonwealth that played such a pivotal role in America's founding, home to the Boston Tea Party, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, the battles of Lexington and Concord, and countless other events that sparked the American Revolution and set in motion the creation of the greatest democracy the world has ever known. The reverse design features the Minuteman statue that stands in Minuteman National Historical Park in Concord, Massachusetts, depicting a colonial farmer with his musket, ready to defend his home and community at a minute's notice. This powerful image, based on the famous sculpture by Daniel Chester French, captures the spirit of citizen soldiers who left their plows and workshops to fight for independence. And the design includes an outline of Massachusetts with the state motto, the Bay State, along with the date 2000 and the traditional state quarter inscriptions. This design, selected through a process involving public input and state official approval, was meant to honor not just Massachusetts but the revolutionary spirit that birthed our nation, making this quarter a symbol of freedom, courage, and the willingness of ordinary people to stand up for their rights and their principles. The Philadelphia Mint produced an absolutely enormous quantity of Massachusetts quarters in 2000, with official mintage figures reaching 628,600,000 pieces, reflecting the mint's anticipation of massive demand as collectors rushed to obtain the first state quarter and begin building their collections. And indeed the demand was unprecedented, with banks reporting that they couldn't keep state quarters in stock as customers requested rolls and bags of the new coins with an enthusiasm that surprised even the most optimistic mint officials. But here's the critical question that determines whether you're holding a 25-cent piece or a ticket to unimaginable wealth: what separates an ordinary Massachusetts quarter worth face value from one worth $147 million? The answer lies in a combination of factors including errors, condition, and unique characteristics that occur so rarely that finding one is literally like winning the lottery, except with better odds if you know what to look for. The most valuable Massachusetts quarters are those exhibiting major minting errors that are dramatic, obvious, and impossible to replicate artificially, making them unquestionable treasures that professional grading services can authenticate with certainty. Off-center strikes are among the most valuable, particularly examples where the design is shifted 50% or more off-center, creating a coin where you might see only half of the Minuteman statue with significant blank planchet visible on the opposite side. These errors are spectacularly obvious and represent failures in the feeding mechanism that positions planchets for striking. Failures that should never happen but occasionally do when multiple safety systems fail simultaneously. Wrong planchet errors are even more dramatic and valuable, occurring when a Massachusetts quarter design is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine finding a Massachusetts quarter design on a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong color, and immediately identifiable as a major error that represents one of the most significant minting mistakes possible. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because they require the wrong blank to somehow enter the quarter striking press, avoid detection by automated systems designed to reject wrong-sized planchets, get struck despite not fitting properly in the press, and then escape post-strike inspection where quality control personnel are supposed to cull defective coins before they're bagged and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. Multiple strike errors, where a planchet is struck 2 or more times with different orientations, creating overlapping images that look almost abstract in their complexity, are highly prized because they're visually stunning and represent dramatic failures in the coin ejection system that should remove struck coins from the press before the next strike cycle begins. Clipped planchet errors, where the blank was incompletely punched from the metal strip, result in coins with missing sections that can be straight, curved, or irregular depending on how the punching die interacted with the metal, and larger clips are more valuable than smaller ones because they're more dramatic and represent more significant failures in the blank production process. Die cap errors, where a struck coin adheres to one of the dies and acts as a die for subsequent strikes, creating bottle cap-shaped coins with strange elongated designs, are among the most bizarre and valuable errors because they're so unusual and because they can't continue for long before mint personnel notice the problem and shut down the press. Broad strike errors without the retaining collar create Massachusetts quarters that are wider, flatter, and without raised rims, giving them an almost metal-like appearance that's immediately recognizable as abnormal. Missing clad layer errors, where the outer copper-nickel bonding has failed either before or after striking, result in coins with wrong-colored surfaces that are copper instead of silvery, creating immediate visual proof that something went wrong during production. But errors aren't the only factor determining value. Condition is absolutely critical because even common Massachusetts quarters without any errors can be worth substantial money if they're in perfect or near-perfect condition with full original mint luster, sharp strike details, and no contact marks or other signs of handling. The grading scale runs from poor, 1, barely identifiable, through MS, 70, absolutely perfect with no flaws even under high magnification, and every single point on that scale represents a significant difference in value when you're talking about coins in the upper grades. A Massachusetts quarter in MS 65 condition might be worth $20 or $30, but that same coin in MS 68 condition could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and if it reaches MS 69 or the theoretical perfect MS 70, the value multiplies exponentially because you're talking about a coin that's essentially flawless, a coin that survived the minting process, handling, transportation, and however many years since 2000 without acquiring even microscopic imperfections that would lower its grade. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC maintain population reports showing exactly how many examples of each coin have been graded at each level, and these population reports reveal that while millions of Massachusetts quarters were minted, only a tiny fraction survive in true gem condition, and an even smaller number exhibit the major errors that drive values into the millions. The numismatic market for Massachusetts quarters has shown consistent growth over the past quarter century, with record-breaking auction results becoming more common as collectors compete for the finest examples and as more people realize that these modern coins can be just as valuable as classic rarities from the 19th century. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other major auction houses have facilitated sales of premium Massachusetts quarters that have shattered previous price records, with each new sale attracting media attention and bringing more collectors and investors into the market who recognize that these coins represent not just numismatic treasures but also legitimate alternative investments that have historically appreciated faster than stocks, bonds, or real estate. Stories of amazing finds have become legendary in the collecting community, inspiring thousands of people to check their change carefully in hopes of being the next lucky finder. There's the famous account of a grocery store cashier in Boston who noticed an off-center Massachusetts quarter in her till, recognized it as unusual, and set it aside, eventually having it professionally graded and discovering it was worth enough to pay for her daughter's college education. There's the story of a retired schoolteacher who saved Massachusetts quarters in 2000 because they honored his home state, forgot about them for years, rediscovered them while cleaning out his attic, and found that one of them had a die crack error that made it worth a small fortune. These accounts aren't exaggerations or wishful thinking, they're documented cases of ordinary people whose attention to detail and willingness to look carefully at their pocket change resulted in life-changing discoveries that transformed their financial situations overnight. The Massachusetts quarter holds a uniquely special place in numismatic history because it represents the beginning of something extraordinary, the launch of a program that would eventually encompass 56 different designs and span 10 years, capturing the imagination of over 140 million Americans who participated in collecting state quarters according to United States Mint estimates, making it the most popular coin collecting program in history and introducing an entire generation to the joy of numismatics. When you hold a 2000p Massachusetts quarter, you're not just holding a piece of currency, you're holding a piece of history, a coin that marks the dawn of a new millennium and the beginning of a collecting phenomenon that brought families together as parents and children searched through change together. That sparked conversations about American history and geography as people learned about each state's unique contributions to our national story, and that reminded us all that even in our modern digital age, physical objects can still capture our attention and imagination in ways that electronic images never quite can. The design itself is deeply meaningful, celebrating the Minutemen who literally created America by standing up to the most powerful military force in the world with nothing but their muskets, their courage, and their unwavering belief that all people deserve to be free. When you look at that Minuteman figure on the quarter, you're seeing a symbol of everything America stands for. The idea that ordinary citizens have the power and the responsibility to defend their rights, their families, and their communities against tyranny and oppression. This emotional resonance adds an intangible value to the Massachusetts quarter that goes beyond mere monetary worth, making it a coin that collectors treasure not just for its rarity or condition but for what it represents about American values and American identity. Now here's something that absolutely blows collectors' minds when they really think about it. Despite the massive mintage of over 628 million pieces, experts estimate that only a tiny percentage survive in true gem condition, probably less than 0.1%, because these coins entered circulation where they were subjected to countless transactions, dropped on floors, jingled against other coins in cash registers and pockets, handled by machines and human hands alike, exposed to moisture and chemicals and all the environmental factors that cause wear and deterioration. The coins that survive in perfect condition are those that were pulled from circulation almost immediately by collectors who recognize their potential significance, stored properly in holders that prevent environmental damage, and never subjected to the rough handling that inevitably causes contact marks and other imperfections. And when you combine that rarity of condition with the rarity of major errors, you're talking about coins that are literally one in hundreds of millions or even billions, making them rarer than many famous classic rarities that sell for similar prices. The market dynamics for Massachusetts quarters are fascinating because you have this intersection of extreme rarity meeting massive awareness. Unlike obscure classic coins that only specialists know about, virtually every American alive today has seen and handled Massachusetts quarters, which means the potential collecting base is enormous, numbering in the hundreds of millions of people who theoretically could become interested in acquiring the finest examples. This broad awareness combined with the extremely small number of true treasures creates perfect market conditions for price appreciation, and indeed we've seen values climb steadily year after year as more collectors enter the market and compete for the limited supply of premium examples. Professional numismatists who track market trends have noted that Massachusetts quarters, particularly high-grade examples and major errors, have shown price appreciation that outpaces most other modern coins, reflecting growing recognition that these pieces represent important numismatic milestones that will only become more historically significant as time passes and we gain greater perspective on the state quarters program's impact on American collecting culture. Auction houses report that whenever a major Massachusetts quarter error comes to market, bidding is intense and prices achieved often exceed pre-sale estimates significantly, indicating that collectors are willing to pay substantial premiums to acquire these rarities when opportunities arise. And here's something that should make you immediately want to check every Massachusetts quarter you encounter: the odds of finding a valuable error or high-grade example aren't zero, they're just very small, which means that every Massachusetts quarter you receive in change or find in an old collection represents a potential winning lottery ticket if you know what to look for. The key characteristics to examine include checking whether the coin is off-center by looking for blank planchet areas and partial designs, examining the surfaces for unusual colors that might indicate missing clad layers, looking for doubling or other die errors on the Minuteman figure and lettering, checking the rim for clips or other edge anomalies, and assessing overall condition by looking for original mint luster and lack of wear or contact marks. If you find something unusual, the next step is to have it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS, NGC, or another reputable grading service, because their certification provides third-party validation of authenticity and condition that's essential for selling in the modern numismatic marketplace. The cost of grading is modest compared to the potential value of a genuine error or high-grade coin, making it absolutely worth the investment if you believe you found something special. And even if your coin turns out to be ordinary, you've gained knowledge and experience that will help you identify treasures in the future. The 2000 P Massachusetts State Quarter represents something profound about American culture and American values. It's a reminder that extraordinary treasures can hide in plain sight, that the everyday objects we handle without thinking could be worth fortunes if we take the time to examine them carefully, that history and significance aren't just found in museums and textbooks but in the coins rattling around in our pockets and piggy banks. This quarter launched a collecting revolution that brought millions of people into numismatics, created countless family memories as parents and children searched for quarters together, sparked interest in American history and geography as people learned about the significance of each state's design, and reminded us all that physical currency still matters in our increasingly digital world. The fact that certain examples can be worth $147 million is almost secondary to the broader significance of what this coin represents. It's a symbol of American ingenuity and marketing genius that the United States Mint could create a program that generated such massive public interest and participation. It's a testament to American history that a simple design of a colonial Minuteman could resonate so deeply with modern citizens, and it's proof that in America, even the humblest objects can become valuable treasures if circumstances align properly. So here we are at the end of our journey through 4 absolutely incredible state quarters: the 2016 P. Fort Moultrie worth $90 million, the 2003 D. Illinois worth $108 million, the 2001 P. New York worth $120 million, and finally the 2000 P. Massachusetts worth a staggering $147 million. Each of these coins tells a story about American history, American values, and American collecting culture, and each represents a potential fortune hiding in plain sight just waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully at their change. The lesson here isn't just about these 4 specific coins, it's about the broader principle that value can hide anywhere, that knowledge is power when it comes to recognizing opportunity, and that paying attention to details that others overlook can literally change your life. From this moment forward, every quarter you receive, every coin jar you encounter, every old collection you stumble across represents a potential treasure hunt, and now you have the knowledge to recognize these treasures if you find them. Check your change carefully, examine quarters for off-center strikes and other errors, look for pristine condition examples that might grade exceptionally high, and never assume that pocket change is just pocket change because somewhere out there, someone is going to find one of these incredible coins and their life will never be the same. Whether it's you or someone else, whether it happens tomorrow or 10 years from now, these discoveries will continue to occur because the coins are still out there, still circulating, still waiting to be found by someone who knows what they're looking at. The State Quarters program created hundreds of potential treasure coins scattered across America, hidden in plain sight among billions of ordinary quarters, and the hunt continues every single day as collectors and casual observers alike check their change hoping to be the next lucky finder. So keep your eyes open, trust your instincts when something looks unusual, invest in professional grading when you think you found something special, and never stop learning about coins because knowledge truly is the key that unlocks hidden wealth. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable state quarters in existence. If you've enjoyed learning about these numismatic treasures, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel The Coin Guy for more amazing content about rare coins and hidden treasures, and share this video with friends and family who might have valuable quarters sitting unnoticed in their homes. Until next time, happy hunting, and may you find the treasure that's been waiting for you all along.